get into the book.
Sure.
A fan's quest to run the team that he loves. Love the title.
I appreciate
Just open up about the book. Tell us what's it about. Tell the fans that are listening that may not have picked up a copy yet. What's the book about?
Well, it's really about two things to me. One is obviously I and participated on the Black and many of the other blogs, the blogosphere, on a vote, an up or down vote. Here's what I believe: should I be the next general manager of the New York Mets? But really, what persuaded me to want to do this was as simple as thinking about the legacy I was giving to my daughter. My daughter was born on March 29th last year, and there was never any doubt in my mind from the start I wanted to share baseball with her. Whether, if she ends up loving it or not, time will tell. So far, it's been an amazing experience taking her to a whole bunch of ball games, but I wanted to share it with her. And what was I sharing with her? I was sharing a team that had given me more heartache, more fatigue than I had any reason to expect from that team. It was passed down to me from my father. My father was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan.
Okay.
I guess there's a certain legacy in that, in heartache and coming close but not quite getting there most of the time. But it seemed to me that I was getting a lot of heartache, number one. Number two, unnecessarily so, that there were very easy fixes to make the Mets with basic competence into a team that would provide far more joy than they had over the period of my life to date. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't think that I needed to be the best general manager in baseball history, that I simply, I ran under the banner of logic, transparency, and passion. And these were basics that I thought could be fairly easily incorporated into what the Mets were doing and make that change. And moreover, I felt that and I still feel this way, I have a certain responsibility about something that has such a key emotional component in my life and in your life and the life of so many of us. That,
right.
You compare it to being a football fan. Well, you end up watching 16 games a year, as many as 19 if your team makes it to the Super Bowl. 3 hours at a pop is 57 hours a time. Baseball, game alone, you're talking 162 games a year, 3 hours a pop, and that's entry level.
Yep.
That's if you're not blogging about it. That's if you're not reading about the Mets. That's if you're not opening the newspaper every day or talking on the phone to your friends about a trade you would like the Mets to make, talking on Twitter, as you and I have plenty of times about it.
That is every day, all day, every single day of the year, on or off season.
On or off season. And so can you think of what are the things in our lives that take up that much time? For me, it's my marriage, the raising of my child, and baseball.
Yep.
And frankly, that, yes, I also do it for a living, but that would be the case if I were doing it for a living or not. That was the case long before I was doing it for a living.
Absolutely.
So, so to me, to have something that's so paramount, and we take time and care and evaluate, who we are going to marry. We take time and care and evaluate how we raise our children. That we wouldn't take the same kind of time and care in trying to have some effect on our baseball team, I just couldn't imagine it. It just doesn't make any sense. And so it struck me that by writing this book and running for general manager, and people have asked me this, did I think that I was going to be the next general manager? No, I certainly didn't expect it. I didn't think there was an overwhelming likelihood that I would be elected to an unelected position.
Right.
That I would, but what I did believe, and to this day do believe, is that by raising these issues in a way that would get attention, I believe that I could help the Mets to see that there's a different way of doing business. And now I don't know if at the end of the day, my run made a huge difference, made any difference at all, or whether Sandy Alderson would have been the choice regardless of whether I made that run or not. What I can tell you is that Alderson sure was exactly the man I would have chosen to fulfill these things. And, as I write in the final chapter of the book, which is actually entitled Deus Ex Alderson, that logic, transparency, and passion were at the center of everything Alderson has done from the moment he took over. And the specifics of how to incorporate that have been a key part of what he's done ever since as well. The only unfortunate part and the frustrating part is that my point is basic competence would be enough to carry the Mets through because they have New York money. And
they don't have. Seems like they don't have New York money anymore.
Exactly. They have. You know why? I mean, I said to my wife, it seems like they are predetermined to either have competent management or money, but not both.
But not both. Yeah.
Well, for now, that's the case. Although, you know, I can't help it. I'm optimistic about the future. You can't help but be optimistic if your first baseball season you followed was 1986. I guess.
There you go. And I mean that's what we long for again, is those types of memories. So, skipping ahead in the book, a couple questions here. Chapter 5. Mm-hmm. You talk a little bit about former Mets GM Steve Phillips. I had to ask you about Steve Phillips.
Sure.
Now, one of the things that you talk about is, well, you ran down his career and, you know, his post-Mets career, which we don't need to go into all those details. But,
right.
You wrote a letter to him challenging him to a debate. Did you ever get any correspondence back from him on that?
I did. I got I'm trying to remember the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of no. It was a very short, terse reply. Yeah. You know, just to provide some background, look, as any Mets fan would, I'd love to debate Phillips, you know, over the idea, you know, what the hell were you thinking about 20 million things under the sun, as I detail in the chapter. But he was writing this column for AOL Fan House at the time.
Uh-huh.
You know, and he had this one column, think you can be GM, you have no idea, you know, in all caps.
Yeah.
And the essence of the column was, yes, it's not just the major league team, it's the minor league team too. And also it's dealing with coaches and it's dealing with the owner. Well, I knew that. Lots of people knew that. I don't think you had to be the general manager and sign Mo Vaughn out of a batting cage to know that.
You're right.
And so I wanted to have that conversation to sort of lay to rest. I don't have a lot of patience in general for people who lay claim to expertise based on the fact that they held a position rather than actual expertise. To me seems like a perfect example of that. And even in Major League Baseball, a place where people get rehired and hired for the same position on different teams over and over again, I think it's noticeable that you haven't seen Phillips hired by any Major League organization.
That's very true and a good point. Yeah, I mean, you know, just as a fan, you know, after he left the Mets, he just irked me. You know, every chance he would get, whether it would be ESPN or on Fan House, or, you know, every once in a while he did a video blog himself. You know, It just seemed like every chance he got to take a shot at the Mets, you know, he took that shot without ever coming to grips with terms that he helped put the Mets in sort of some of the positions that they were in you know, early on in this decade, if you will. So.
And as I detail in that chapter, he wasted so much money. You know, we talk about, and I make the point in the book, that to my mind, not signing Alex Rodriguez was the single biggest mistake in franchise history, even more so than trading Tom Seaver, even more so than trading Nolan Ryan. And if Phillips had simply planned ahead and made certain choices, like not spend $6.6 million on Dennis Cook, when he had Scott Sauerbeck in the minor leagues, he could have paid the league minimum to over 3 years and done that a bunch of different times. You could have easily afforded Alex Rodriguez with the same amount of money spent.
Right. Interesting point. Yeah, that is interesting to think back. If A-Rod was ever a Met, what the course of the organization would have been. Who knows? We may not ever have seen Jose Reyes though.
It's or maybe he plays second base. You know.
That's true. Yeah.
No, but in all seriousness, and that's a whole other conversation.
Right.
Frustration isn't moving Reyes to second so much as moving him for Matsui. Alex Rodriguez was the most valuable free agent that it is possible to imagine. To be 24 years old, so knowing that even if you sign him for 10 years, you're arguably getting all but a couple of years as peach seasons. Yet, because he made his debut so young, you had a track record to know exactly how great a player he was. He was a Gold Glove quality shortstop, and I don't mean in the Derek Jeter sense. I mean in the actual defending sense.
Right.
And offensively, the best shortstop there's ever been. That is the player you signed, and then on top of it, that he wanted more than any other team to go to the New York Mets. I'm going to be ill just thinking about it.
All right, well, I'll change topics for you.
So,
Maybe we can talk about something a little bit more happier. So, Chapter 15, moving ahead, you talk about some of the primaries that you had in that chapter. You talked about the involvement that you got and the participation you got from bloggers. You mentioned this blog on the Black, which I thank you for, and that you won 80% of the vote from that primary. Let's talk about the bloggers for a second. What did that mean? The participation from the many Mets blogs that you got for your campaign, for getting the word out there, and even I guess in a sense for the book too. What did that mean to your entire campaign?
Well, I think it was a question of proving my legitimacy in terms of the eyes of the fans. And, there's been a lot of conversation about this recently. I feel like it's a relatively recent phenomenon. It was pointed out in the Sports Illustrated article, I believe, that every 200,000 fans the Mets draw is worth about $25 million to their bottom line.
Okay.
So if you think about it in those terms, very clearly what the fans want is going to have a direct impact on what the team is able to accomplish off the field. And so, this is fundamentally understood in a lot of other sports. There are, all over Europe, there are popularly elected team presidents for the major soccer teams, Real Madrid and a number of teams in England and so on and so forth. And so, again, the reason for that is that you have a direct impact on how much money the team can take in. And again, as we're finding out, amply, how much money a team can take in has every effect on what the team can do in terms of what you put out on the field. And so to be able to show the Wilpons at this time that the fans supported my specific prescription for what the New York Mets should be doing, I thought should go a long way toward, if not putting me in that position, finding someone like Sandy Alderson who would do those things. And there was a lot of negativity, and I heard again and again, from the team that, Mets fans just like to complain. And I don't think that's true. No. I think Mets fans wanted something positive to hold on to, in the same way that anyone who's going through a horrific experience, if that person doesn't have frustration as a result of it, there's a dissociative disorder there. You wouldn't want that person to sit there and think, wow, everything is great.
Everything's fine, right.
I think there were changes that needed to be made that, frankly, still need to be made. Unfortunately, they need the lubrication of a little bit of money. And so in the short term, it's hard to see that happening. Although, without getting too much into the weeds, I think it's going to be a question of when, not if, the Mets are under new ownership.
Gotcha. And to that point, I'm going to steal a little bit from my buddy Matt Cerrone over at Mets Blog. He always takes a poll, right track, wrong track. Where do you think the Mets are right now? Are they on the right track, or are they on the wrong track, or are you undecided?
I will say right track for the simple reason that I like the baseball operations management right now, and I like the fact that David Einhorn, who strikes me as someone who is the ownership equivalent. I'll have a piece on Capital New York about this. The ownership equivalent of what Alderson does on the baseball side is what David Einhorn does on the investment side, that he will be the owner sooner than later. Those two men working in tandem could be wonderful. Now, if that ends up 3 to 5 years down the line for Einhorn's ownership, Alderson may not stick around for that.
Right.
And that would be the unfortunate thing, but of course that goes back to what we had previously talked about. Can the Mets have stable ownership and financials and good baseball operations at the same time? Let me just say, if it's not Alderson, I firmly believe that Einhorn will find someone who knows what he's doing.